You're becoming a useless burden. I have my career, my kids, my house, and now I'm supposed to carry you?" Amanda's words slashed the dining room air. Time seemed to freeze. Noah's spilled soda still dripped from the table's edge, pooling sticky on the polished hardwood floor I waxed monthly. My body locked, every muscle seized as if shocked. My right hand clenched the embroidered cloth napkin, the one I'd stitched myself for special occasions. 67. My birthday. The lasagna I'd spent all afternoon making still steamed in the center of the table. "Amanda, I was just..." I tried to explain, but my voice faded to a ghost of a whisper. "Mom!" Mike shot up, his face blazing with indignation. "How could you say that?" Jason, my youngest, placed a hand on my shoulder. His body was a wire next to mine. The children, my sweet grandkids, stared, wide-eyed and frozen. Mia, with her 6-year-old eyes wide as saucers, started to weep. Noah stood transfixed, the empty glass still clutched in his hand. Mark, Amanda's husband, simply bowed his head. "Amanda, please!" But she was already on her feet, flung her napkin onto the table, snatched her purse. "I can't do this. Not anymore." And she slammed the door so hard the little chime I kept by the entrance sang out for endless seconds. The silence that followed was deafening. You must be wondering how we got to this point. How my own daughter, that little girl I'd rocked to sleep, held for her first steps, comforted through every disappointment, could call me a useless burden on my birthday. I echoed the question that night, alone on the porch after they'd all gone, clutching a mug of chamomile tea I couldn't drink, my hands shaking too hard. Everything started to change about 2 years ago, when I retired from the hospital where I'd worked for over 30 years. At first, retirement seemed like a dream. Finally, I'd have time for all those things I'd put off, catching up on books, finally taking that gardening class, even seeing some of the world. But then came the arthritis. Nothing serious, the doctor dismissed. "Normal for your age," he'd said, with that patronizing smile young doctors reserve for the elderly. I started feeling aches in my joints, especially on cold mornings. My movements slowed, grew more careful. That's when I noticed the first changes in Amanda. "Mom, it took you ages to answer the phone," she complained once. "Sorry, honey. I was in the bathroom and these legs aren't what they used to be," I replied with a smile, trying for levity. She offered no smile back. Only a sigh, deep and loaded, as if I'd committed some unforgivable error. On another occasion, I offered to pick Noah up from school, as I often did. "Better not, Mom. Last time you got turned around coming home." I didn't get lost. I just took a slight detour to show Noah a new toy store. But I didn't argue. Her tone brooked no argument. Sunday visits, which used to be boisterous and chaotic, filled with kids' laughter and overlapping conversations, became tense. Amanda's gaze constantly drifted to her wrist. Mark perpetually looked ill at ease. Only the children kept the same joy when they saw me, leaping into my lap, which made my knees protest, but I'd never complain. "Grandma, tell that hospital story again," Noah would beg. "Grandma, look at the drawing I made for you." Mia would thrust out her colorful papers, and for those moments, I was alive again, useful, loved. Then Amanda would cut in. "Kids, don't tire Grandma out. She's old." Old. The word dropped like a stone. Mike and Jason noticed the change in their sister's behavior. They tried to talk to her a few times. "Amanda, Mom did everything for us. How can you treat her this way?" I heard Mike say once when they thought I was in the kitchen. You guys just don't get it. You're not the one she calls at 3 a.m. because she heard a strange noise. You're not the one who has to chauffeur her to every doctor's appointment because she doesn't trust ride shares. Amanda snapped, exasperated. It was true I'd called her in the middle of the night. Once. When a fierce storm broke a branch off the old oak tree that crashed against my window. I swore it was a burglar. I was terrified. Alone in a house that had suddenly grown too large. And yes, I asked her to take me to the doctor a few times. But not because I didn't trust ride shares. It was because I felt lonely and wanted her company. I craved conversation, details of her life, of the grandkids. I yearned to feel part of the family I'd sacrificed so much to build. In the weeks leading up to my birthday, the tension became a palpable thing. Amanda barely answered my calls. When she did, she was always rushed. Mom, I'm at work. Make it quick. Mom, I'm taking the kids to swim practice. I'll call you later. She never called back. Mom, not today. I have a client meeting. Even so, I wanted to celebrate my birthday with all of them. I planned every detail. The lasagna, the family's favorite, the salad Mark loved, the kids' beloved chocolate cake with strawberry frosting. I bought soda, wine for the adults, fresh juice for those who didn't drink alcohol. I spent the day cooking, ignoring the sharp twinges in my fingers as I chopped vegetables, the weary ache in my legs from standing hours over the sauce. I wanted everything to be perfect. Mike arrived first, with a bouquet of daisies, my favorite flowers, and a tight hug. Happy birthday, Mom. You're getting younger by the year. Jason came soon after, carrying a brightly wrapped package. Mom, you're gonna love this. It's that book by the author you mentioned last month. Amanda called to say she'd be late. Last-minute meeting at the office. When she finally arrived, she looked exhausted and irritated. She barely greeted me. Mark and the kids trailed in, offering timid smiles and a potted orchid. Grandma! Noah and Mia ran to hug me. For a moment, everything seemed fine. We sat down for dinner. I served everyone, proud of the meal I'd prepared. Conversations flowed, though Amanda remained quiet, barely touching her food. That's when Noah, excited about a goal he scored at school, gestured wildly and knocked over his glass of soda. It was a minor mishap. Kids will be kids. I moved slowly to the kitchen for a cloth. Then, Amanda exploded. The words I'll never forget. Useless burden. After everyone left, Mike and Jason hovered, reluctant to leave me alone, but I insisted I was fine. I sat on the porch and cried. These weren't merely tears of sadness or hurt. They were a lifetime's worth, shed for decades of selfless dedication. I remembered the sleepless nights when Amanda had a high fever at 3, the terror when she fell off her bike at 7 and broke her arm, the hours studying together for her SATs, the surge of emotion seeing her graduate, radiant in her cap and gown, the pride holding newborn Noah at the hospital, and later Mia. I also remembered the day Richard, my husband, passed away. A swift heart attack, mowing the lawn, gone at 42. I was left alone with 3 small children and bills to pay. I never complained. I did what needed to be done. I picked up double shifts at the hospital, sewed school uniforms into the wee hours for extra cash, baked cakes to sell on weekends. All of it so my children could have the best I could possibly give. And now, at 67, I was a useless burden. That birthday night changed something inside me. As the tears dried on my face, a resolve began to crystallize, a clarity I hadn't touched in years. The next morning, still in my pajamas, eyes swollen from crying, I picked up the phone and called Sharon, my lifelong friend who'd retired to Charleston, South Carolina. Sharon! What a wonderful surprise. Her cheerful voice was a balm to my heart. How was your birthday? I hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest. I told her everything. Amanda's words, the pain I felt, the hollow ache that remained. Sharon was silent for a few seconds. Oh, Deborah, I'm so sorry. But you know what I think? I think it's time you started living for you. What do you mean? You've spent your whole life caring for others. Your children, your patients, now your grandkids. When was the last time you did something just for you? Something that was purely for your joy, not for anyone else's. I had no answer. I couldn't remember. Come here, Sharon continued. I'm not saying forever, but come visit me. See what life is like here. We have a wonderful group of ladies who do water aerobics together. We take day trips, volunteer at the children's hospital. You'd love it. The idea seemed absurd at first. Me, abandoning my home, my routine. What about the grandkids? What if Amanda needed me? But then I remembered. Useless burden. I'll think about it, Sharon, I replied, still uncertain. In the days that followed, the idea took root within me. I started researching Charleston, South Carolina, online. I saw photos of stunning beaches, read about the mild climate, the relaxed pace of life. I discovered there was a hospital that accepted volunteers to read stories to hospitalized children. A week after the call, I made my decision. I invited Mike over for coffee. Son, I need to tell you something. I'd sell the condo, buy a smaller place in Charleston near Sharon, start a new life. I expected resistance, pleased to stay. Instead, his eyes welled up. Mom, if that's what's gonna make you happy, you have my unwavering support. You deserve this, Mom. 3 weeks later, the condo was sold. I found a small beach house 10 minutes from Sharon's place, just steps from the coast. It was perfect. Cozy, with a small garden I could nurture without strain, and a porch with a distant glimpse of the ocean. I kept my plans from Amanda and Jason. Only Mike, who helped me with all the paperwork and logistics. On moving day, I left 3 letters on the kitchen table. One for Jason, one for Mike, thanking him, and one for Amanda. The letter to Amanda held no recriminations, no lingering bitterness. I simply wrote that I loved her, but that I needed to rediscover myself, beyond the roles of mother and grandmother. That she was right. I couldn't be a burden to anyone, especially not to myself. When the moving truck pulled away, carrying the sparse belongings I'd chosen to keep, I felt a dizzying mix of fear and exhilaration. At 67, I was starting over. What Amanda never envisioned, what I myself never dared to dream, was that her cruel words would be my liberation. That devastating birthday dinner had been the jolt I needed to unearth my own strength. Now, sitting on the porch of my little Charleston beach house, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, I think about how life comes full circle. How sometimes you need deep pain to find a new path. My phone buzzes beside me. It's Amanda. She's probably figured out I sold the condo, that I moved. I could practically feel her shock, her confusion. I let it ring once more. Then I answered. This conversation would be different, because I was different. I was no longer a burden. I was Deborah, 67, and my life was just beginning. When the phone rang, I took a deep breath, answered. Amanda's voice on the other end sounded raw, barely recognizable. Mom? Is it true? You sold the condo? You moved to Charleston? Her words were choked with sobs. Why didn't you say anything? I looked at the ocean in the distance, the waves gently breaking on the sand. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink I'd never seen in Chicago. Yes, sweetie, it's true. But why? Was it... My words. Mom, I didn't mean it. I was stressed, so tired. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sea breeze cool my face. There was no anger, only a quiet serenity I hadn't felt in decades. Amanda, your words hurt. I won't lie. But they also made me see something I couldn't before. That I'd lived so long for others. I'd forgotten how to live for myself. The silence on the other end of the line was broken by a raw, muffled sob. Are you coming back? She asked, her voice small, thin, like when she was a girl afraid of storms. No, sweetie, I'm not coming back. I'm starting. My first week in Charleston was a blur of discoveries and delicate adjustments. Sharon introduced me to her water aerobics group, 6 ladies between 65 and 78, who met 3 times a week in the heated pool at the neighboring condo complex. Gloria, the oldest, possessed an energy that shamed us all. Deborah, honey, you just have to try the circle dance class too. It does wonders for the hips, she insisted as we did our exercises in the water. At first, my body protested. My arthritis flared with the effort, forcing a painkiller each night for sleep. But after the second week, something subtle shifted. The aches began to recede. My movements grew fluid. The local doctor I consulted explained that the water exercise was exactly what my joints needed. Keep at it, Miss Smith. You're on the right track. It was jarring to hear Mrs. Smith without the usual condescension. Here it was simple respect, never pity. While tidying up my little beach house, I found a box of old photographs I'd brought with me. I sat down on the living room rug and started looking through them, one by one. There was one in particular that took me back to a moment I'd long forgotten. It was Amanda's 7th birthday. I'd worked double shifts at the hospital to afford the doll she desperately wanted, one of those expensive talking dolls. The party was going to be simple. A cake, soda, and little finger foods I'd made myself the night before, after a 12-hour shift. Richard was still alive then, though his weak heart, the one that would claim him years later, was already making its presence known. That afternoon, he got into a heated argument with our neighbor about the volume of their music. He came back inside, agitated, clutching his chest. It's nothing, he'd said, popping a pill. Just need a moment. The party was scheduled for 4 in the afternoon. At 3:30, Richard collapsed in the kitchen. Panicked, I called an ambulance. Amanda, dressed in her best dress, her hair done up with colorful ribbons, watched everything from her bedroom doorway, her eyes huge with fear. At the hospital, after they stabilized Richard, it wasn't a heart attack, just angina, I returned home exhausted. It was past 8 that night. The party never happened. The few guests who'd arrived left. The cake sat untouched in the fridge. I found Amanda sitting on her bed, still in her party dress, holding the new doll, still in its pristine packaging. Her eyes were raw, swollen from endless crying. I'm so sorry, sweetie, I said, sitting beside her. Your dad needed help. She didn't answer, just squeezed the doll tighter. Tomorrow we'll have a party just for us, okay? We'll eat the cake, sing happy birthday. It won't be the same, she mumbled, her voice small. "No one will come now." "I'll be there," I promised, hugging her. "Always there for you, my princess." She finally looked at me, her eyes still teary. "Promise?" "I promise. Whenever you need me, Mommy will be there." Looking at that photo, Amanda offering a strained smile next to the cake the next day, the new doll in her arms, I realized something I'd never noticed before. Perhaps unintentionally, I had forged an impossible expectation. Perhaps Amanda grew up expecting my endless sacrifice, just as I'd offered it so many times. And when I started to show signs that I also had needs, that I also needed care, it fractured the image she held of me. The invincible mother. The mother who never fails. The mother who never needs. The phone jolted me from my thoughts. It was Jason. "Mom, what's this I hear? Mike said you moved to Charleston. Why didn't you say anything?" I explained everything to him, just as I had to Amanda. Jason was quiet for a beat. "You know, Mom, I think I get it. After Sarah left me, I also felt like I needed to start over, to recenter myself." Jason had divorced 2 years prior after discovering his wife's infidelity. He'd navigated a difficult period. "The difference is you're 40, son. I'm 67. People expect me to quietly fade into grandma, an old lady who doesn't ruffle feathers. And since when do you ever care what people expect, Mom?" He chuckled. "You've always been the toughest of us all." His words warmed me to my core. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd always been strong. I'd just forgotten it for a while. 2 weeks later, I had my first visitors. Mike came with his wife, Denise, and brought my grandkids from his side, Olivia 10 and Noah 7. The kids were beside themselves with the beach's proximity. We spent the afternoon building sandcastles, a simple joy I'd never known. "Grandma, you don't know how to build a sandcastle?" Noah asked, incredulous. "I never had time to learn, sweetie," I replied, chuckling at my own clumsy attempts. "I'll teach you," he offered, proud he could teach me something. That night, after the kids were asleep, Mike and I talked on the porch, watching the stars. A dizzying galaxy, far from the city's light pollution. "Mom, I've never seen you so at peace," he commented, taking a sip of wine. "It's like I've had a weight lifted off my shoulders, son. A burden I hadn't even known I bore." "Amanda still calling?" I sighed. "Almost every day. At first it was just tears and guilt. Now she oscillates between begging me to return and furious accusations of abandoning them." Mike shook his head. "She's always been a challenge. Remember when she broke her arm at 7? She spent weeks making you feel guilty, as if you'd personally thrown her from her bike." I chuckled at the memory. It was true. Amanda always had a theatrical flair, a knack for making others bear the weight of her woes. "She'll get over it," Mike said. "And if she doesn't, that's on her. You've given us more than enough, Mom. More than anyone could ask." A month after moving, I started my volunteer work at the Children's Hospital. Twice a week, I'd go with Sharon and 2 other ladies from the group to read stories to the admitted children. We'd bring books, puppets, sometimes even musical instruments. That's where I met Lily, an 8-year-old girl with leukemia. She reminded me of Amanda at the same age, the same curious eyes, that same tilt of the head when something captured her interest. "You're coming back Thursday, right, Miss Deborah?" she asked me after I finished telling the day's story. "Of course, sweetie." "Promise?" "Because the last lady who told stories promised to come back and never did." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. Promises. How many had I made throughout my life? How many had I kept at the expense of my own health, my own dreams? Lily, I'll be honest with you. I'll do my very best to be here Thursday. If for some reason I can't, I'll have someone tell you, okay? She looked at me, surprised, then smiled. Okay, that's fair. That night, sleep eluded me. I kept thinking about all the promises I'd made to Amanda over the years. I'll always be there for you. It was an impossible promise to keep forever. No one can be always there for another, can they? Eventually we age, we falter, we need care ourselves. Perhaps the flaw wasn't in breaking it, but in making such an absolute promise at all. 2 months after I moved, I got an unanticipated call. It was Mark, Amanda's husband. Deborah, I'm sorry to call out of the blue like this, but Amanda, she's not herself. My heart raced. What's wrong? Is she sick? No, it's not that. She's not right. Ever since you moved out, she's been irritable, cries over nothing, snaps at the kids. Yesterday we had a brutal fight because she's fixated on selling the house, moving to Charleston near you. I stood frozen, processing the revelation. Amanda wanting to move near me. The same Amanda who called me a useless burden? Mark, I'm not sure what to say. I'm not asking you to come back, he quickly clarified. I just thought you should know. The kids miss you. I do too, to be honest. You were always the glue, the anchor of this family. After hanging up, I stared out at the ocean through the kitchen window. The glue that held the family together. Was that what I was? An invisible adhesive, taken for granted until it simply stopped holding. That night, I dreamed of Richard. We were young again, walking along the beach. He flashed that smile, the one that had captivated me on our first date. Are you happy, Deborah? He asked in the dream. I'm learning to be, I answered. He nodded as if approving. It was about time. The next week, I had another surprise visitor. Jason arrived, a small duffel slung over his shoulder, admitting he needed to escape Chicago for a few days. Work problems? I asked as I brewed us some coffee. Actually, I met someone, he confessed, a faint flush on his cheeks. I'm a little terrified by what I'm feeling. Jason, my middle son, had always been ever the most reserved, the most guarded with his feelings. Seeing him like this, vulnerable and open, was a startling revelation. Tell me about her, I asked, sitting down at the kitchen table. It's a him, Mom, a co-worker. I looked at my son, seeing the fear in his eyes. Fear of my judgment, fear of rejection. I reached across the table, took his hand. Tell me about him then. Relief washed over Jason's face, immediate and profound. His eyes welled up with tears as he started to talk about Anthony, the engineer he'd met on the company's new project. As I listened, I thought about how unpredictable life is. At 67, I was starting a new chapter, discovering simple pleasures I'd never allowed myself. And my son, at 42, was also rediscovering himself, finding the courage to live authentically. You know what's most ironic, Mom? Jason murmured after a moment. It was your move that gave me courage. Seeing you start over, claiming your own happiness. It made me think maybe it wasn't too late for me either. I pulled my son into a fierce hug, feeling a wave of gratitude for this moment, for this fragile connection that might never have formed had I not dared to leave. 3 months after I moved, I received the visit I'd both dreaded and longed for. Amanda arrived on a Friday bringing Noah and Mia. Mark didn't come. Work commitments, she explained, had held him back. When I opened the door and saw my daughter standing there, her eyes red-rimmed, her hands trembling, a knot tightened in my throat. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then, the kids broke the silence. "Grandma!" They shouted in unison, rushing to hug me. I knelt down carefully. My knees were much better with the regular water aerobics, but they still protested occasionally. And hugged my grandkids, breathing in the sweet scent of child shampoo from their hair. "I've missed you so much, my loves." Noah pulled away first, looking around with curiosity. "Grandma, your house is small. Where's the big couch we used to jump on?" I chuckled at his blunt honesty. "No big couch here, sweetie, but we have the beach right nearby. Did you bring your swimsuits?" The kids' eyes lit up at the mention of the beach. Mia tugged Amanda's hand. "Mommy, can we go now? Please, please." Amanda, who'd been silent until then, managed a strained smile. "Later, sweetie. First, we need to talk to Grandma." I made the kids a snack and left them watching cartoons on the small living room TV, while Amanda and I went out to the porch. The ocean was calm that afternoon. Seagulls drifted low over the water. "It's pretty here," she commented, breaking the awkward silence. "It is. I've watched some of the most breathtaking sunsets here." More silence. Amanda's fingers worried her wedding ring, twisting it round and round. "Mom, I'm so sorry. For my words that day. For everything." I looked at my daughter, that challenging girl who'd blossomed into such a complicated woman. I saw the dark circles under her eyes, the worry lines on her forehead. She looked years older than her 38. "I know you are, honey." I don't know what came over me. I was so stressed with work, with the kids, with everything. And when I saw you taking your time, cleaning up that soda, something in me just snapped. She wiped away a tear. "It wasn't about you. It was about me. About my inability to handle everything." I reached out, touched her cheek, just like I used to when she was little and woke from a nightmare, trembling. "Amanda, do you remember your 7th birthday?" She frowned, confused by the change of subject. "Vaguely. Dad got sick, didn't he? The party didn't happen." "That's right. And do you know what I promised you that night?" She shook her head no. "I promised to always be there, to never leave you alone." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "It was an impossible promise to keep forever, honey. No one can be endlessly available for another, no matter how profound the love." Amanda lowered her head. Tears now carved paths down her face. "I think, unintentionally, I created an unrealistic expectation in you. The notion that my love meant constant sacrifice, infinite availability. And when I started showing signs that I also had needs, that I also needed care, it shattered the image you had of me." "It's no excuse for what I said," she mumbled. "No, it isn't. Words wound, Amanda. Deeply, especially from those we love." I took a deep breath. "But they can also set you free. Your words, harsh as they were, liberated me from a role I'd inhabited so completely. I'd forgotten who I was outside of it." We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the distant hush of waves. "Are you coming back?" she finally asked, her voice small. "No, honey. My life is here now." She nodded slowly as if she'd already expected that answer. "The kids miss you. I miss you. And I miss you all. But that doesn't mean we must live tethered. True love gives room to breathe, respect for autonomy, and celebration of each other's unique journeys." Amanda looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. There was sadness there, but also a flicker of admiration? You're different, she commented. I smiled. I'm finding myself again, honey. At 67, I'm discovering who Deborah is beyond mother, nurse, grandmother. And you know what? I'm rather fond of her. Just then, Noah and Mia came running to the porch. Grandma, can we go to the beach now, please? Noah begged. I looked at Amanda, who wiped her tears, managed a small smile. Let's all go together, she said. I want to see this beach that captured my mom's heart. The weekend with Amanda and the kids was a mix of tender moments and raw conversations. I took them to see the town, introduced them to Sharon and the other ladies from the water aerobics group. Gloria, ever the expansive one, captivated Noah and Mia with tales of her youth as a circus trapeze artist. Your mom's becoming one of us, Gloria joked to Amanda. Last week she even joined the belly dancing class. Amanda looked at me, surprised. Belly dancing, Mom? You? I chuckled, a blush rising to my cheeks. It's just once a week for beginners. The instructor is 70 and outpaces us all. The night before they left, after the kids were asleep, Amanda and I had our most vulnerable conversation in years. Mom, remember when you got sick with pneumonia, right after Dad died? I nodded. It had been a brutal period. Richard had passed away only 3 months before, and I was working myself ragged to keep the household afloat, and I contracted severe pneumonia that landed me in the hospital for 2 weeks. I was 12, Amanda continued. I was so scared of losing you, too. Every night I'd pray, promising to be the perfect daughter if God spared you. Unlike Dad, I never knew that. In my memory, Amanda had been difficult during that time. Rebellious, argumentative, constantly clashing with the aunts and uncles who'd stepped in. When you came home, still weak, I swore to myself I'd be strong enough never to need your help. That, conversely, I would be the one to care for you. Oh, Amanda? But then I grew up, had my own family, my career, my responsibilities. And when I saw you starting to need help, instead of feeling useful, I felt overwhelmed. Like I was failing that desperate promise I'd made as a 12-year-old. I finally understood. Amanda's anger wasn't really directed at me, but at herself. At the terrified little girl who vowed to be strong enough for two, only to discover, as an adult, that no one can be. Honey, you don't have to be strong all the time. No one is. She smiled sadly. You were, though. No, I wasn't. I just didn't show it. And that, in hindsight, wasn't a strength. That night we slept hand in hand, a comfort from her childhood fears of the dark. In the morning, as they got ready to leave, I noticed a subtle lightness, as if a monumental weight had finally fallen from her shoulders. You can come whenever you want, I said as I walked them to the car. And when I miss you too much, I'll come visit you in Chicago. Promise? Mia asked, clinging to my legs. I looked at Amanda before answering. I promise to do my best, sweetheart. And if for some reason I can't make it, I'll call to explain, okay? Amanda nodded, a quiet understanding dawning in her eyes. Realistic promises, realistic expectations, a new beginning for our relationship. 6 months had passed since I moved to Charleston, South Carolina. The winter arrived, bringing colder days, but still much milder than a Chicago winter. My routine now embraced water aerobics thrice weekly, volunteer shifts at the Children's Hospital Tuesdays and Thursdays, watercolor classes on Saturdays, and warm, weekly dinners with Sharon and other friends. Lily, the little girl from the hospital, went into remission and was discharged. On the last day I saw her, she gave me a drawing. Me, surrounded by smiling children, telling stories. "So you don't forget us," she said. "I'll never forget," I promised, and this time, I knew it was a promise I could keep. Mike came to visit regularly with his family. Jason brought Anthony to meet me, a kind, attentive man who clearly adored my son. Amanda called every week and had already returned for 2 more visits with the kids. Last time, Mark joined them, and I could see they were mending their relationship. One Sunday afternoon, while I was painting a watercolor of the ocean from my sun-drenched porch, I got an unexpected call. It was from the hospital where I'd worked for 35 years in Chicago. "Deborah, this is Dr. Sarah Miller from Pediatrics. Do you remember me?" Of course I remembered her. Sarah had been a young resident when I retired. "We're organizing a storytelling program for the hospitalized children, inspired by what you're doing there in Charleston. Your daughter, Amanda, she spoke of your work. We'd love for you to come address our volunteers, share your invaluable experience." I was surprised. Amanda had spoken of my volunteer work. I felt a wave of pride, not just for the invitation, but for the quiet revelation that my daughter had noticed and valued what I was building. "That would be an honor, Doctor. Miller, when would this be?" "Next month. We understand you have your life there now. It would just be a 3-day visit. The hospital will cover all expenses, of course." Details sorted, I hung up, a slow smile spreading across my face. I'd be going back to Chicago, but as a speaker, as someone with knowledge to share. Not as the grandma they expected, tucked quietly into a corner, disturbing no one. That night, sitting on the porch watching the stars, I thought about how life comes full circle. How the sharpest words can sometimes shove us onto paths we'd never have dared to walk alone. Useless burden. Amanda's words, which had hurt me so much on that birthday night, now felt distant, echo of another life entirely. Because I discovered a fundamental truth. No one is a burden when they finally choose to carry themselves. At 67, I learned it's never too late to start over. That old age isn't a quiet surrender to oblivion, but a phase of life as vibrant and teeming with possibilities as any other. That true love, for our children, for our friends, for ourselves, doesn't mean constant sacrifice, but room to breathe, respect for autonomy, and celebration of each other's unique journeys. Looking up at the starry Charleston sky, I felt a profound peace I hadn't known in decades. It wasn't a peace born from an absence of problems, but from the unwavering certainty that, whatever came, I would be well. Because I had, at last, found myself. Deborah, 67 years old, mother, grandmother, retired nurse, storyteller, watercolor painter, friend, woman, alive.